Time for the Leadership Lunch Break with Joy Jackson of Speaking of Joy. Let's tune in for today's discussion with Joyce Johnson.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Leadership Lunch Break. I'm Joy Jackson. So glad that you have joined me for what is episode 39. So Joyce and I said we're going to celebrate our 39th birthday day today.
Yes.
Thank you so much. If you are joining for the first time, I welcome you to the lunch break. My goal is to share leadership principles with you, but not in a traditional way, truly to share principles and ideas, because I believe that leadership is about influence and responsibility, not about a position or title. And so I bring people here who have different positions, different titles, but what we have in common is that we're all striving to be better leaders. And so as I was thinking about someone to bring in today, I couldn't help but invite this amazing lady to the Leadership Lunch Break. Her name is Joyce Johnson, and we met during the pandemic and connections, and we have kept in touch. So Joyce, thank you so much for joining today. Welcome to the Leadership Lunch Break. I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for including me. Like I said, it helps break up the day and to sit and have these conversations with, other professionals and leaders and business owners. As I said, a lot of times business ownership can be a lonely world.
Oh.
Grateful for the conversation.
Absolutely. So tell people about yourself. Who's Joyce Johnson? Why Sales Network? How did we get here? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, who's Joyce Johnson? I'm Joyce is just that, that Southern girl.
Yeah.
At my core, help thy neighbor, right? Serve thy neighbor and what have you. Grew up in Galveston, Texas, which is about 45 miles south of Houston, a small island. And then it's HBCU week. So I have to say, hey, I attended college 45 miles north of Houston at Purdue A&M University. So, I'm the daughter, the niece, the aunt, the sister, the friend, and, really all those things, pop up in my life and put everything else to the side sometimes. But, entrepreneur. I worked in corporate sales for over 25 years. I've sold on behalf of the largest companies in the world to the largest companies in the world. And then I left in 2019 to launch Y Sales Network in January 2020. And it's a global sales training organization. I just recently wrote a program, created a training program, How to Win in Sales. So I mentioned to you earlier, I put a new shift on my calendar. It's from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. so that I can work with editing and doing all of the content to ensure that the people that go and purchase the training program and that engage with Y Sales Network have a great customer experience.
Well, first, let's talk about the fact that as entrepreneurs, there are no set office hours. When Joyce said, when she said 10 to 2, I'm like 10 to 2, like 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. And Joyce said, yes, those are her hours. So kudos to you. I haven't gotten that disciplined yet because, woo. And then you're up at what time? 6, you said?
6:30, yeah.
So the first thing to know about entrepreneurship, it really is or could be 24 hours. Now, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be because we gotta have work life and health, emotional health and things like that. But when you're an entrepreneur and you love what you do, you will put in those extra hours to get it done, right?
Absolutely. And, my creativity comes at night, right? So I'm a nighttime creator. When I write my books and things, normally I'm going to knock out some chapters and things, it's going to be at night. And so not to impact my day when I have special projects, I tend to just schedule those at night. So, I did our webinar yesterday. So when I finished up the webinar at 7, I was on the phone, what have you, 7:30. And then I went upstairs, took a little break, right? And rest my eyes. I ate a little food and then I cooked something for today. So I made me a little cabbage bowl for today. So that when I get hungry, I'll eat something, right? That's somewhat healthy.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, I did all those things. And then, hey, when the clock hit 10 p.m., I had to come back in my office and get back to it.
That's good. So that's discipline. So hello to Carlotta and Bridget. They said hello. That's discipline. That's discipline. So let me ask you, Joyce, what has been, because you said in 2019, you started White Cells Network. So what happened in 2019 that made you bet on yourself versus the corporate life that you have been living for 25 years?
I started in 2020, but in 2017, I wrote my first book. And that's really when I started again to think that I really needed to leave corporate. And I was thinking about, I always tell people, hey, who are you in your best daydream, right?
Oh, that's good.
And in my best daydream, I was the leader of my own faith, and so I began to write my books and build a platform then. And I said, okay, I'll give myself to maybe 2022, 5 years or so, and I'll launch a program. Well, in 2019, I had been number one for 2 consecutive years in my business segment. And I was working really hard, diligently on what I needed to do to continue to meet those goals. And I was happy, but yet I was just meeting these walls, right? For us being able to expand or be able to what I considered was professional growth, and not even really professional growth, because it was really be going back to the levels of responsibility and impact that I had. I wanted to be in a role where I could really impact the business and impact the lives of others.
Yeah.
And I was doing that, right? But I wanted to do it where the decisions were really being made.
Yes, absolutely.
So I was asking for my seat at the table, and I was getting a lot of pushback about that. And I was just having a conversation one day, and before I knew it, it was just like, why am I doing this? It's like, okay, well, let's see what a package looks like, and let's see what I can, let me just go ahead and take some time off. I had another project. I do some consulting, on different projects. I had another project coming for the end of the year. I said, let me take some time off and just move forward. And so I did. And I it was just timing. Sometimes you want to time things out. Like I said, 2022 was my year that I was really planning to do it. And it just came sooner.
Oh, right. Okay. And so what has been, because one of the things I want to talk about, especially you and I had a conversation last week, and we talked about like just the power of our voice and understanding diversity, but not from the traditional perspective. I mean, we've all experienced that conversation or those diversity conversations. But if you had to say, who's Joyce's voice? Like, what is it that gets you going? What is that?
I'm always been an advocate for people, right? And for, I was sharing with someone that there was even a time when maybe, I think I've stayed at a company or organization or a role a little longer because I was like, if I leave, who's going to take care of these people?
Yes.
Who's going to mentor our young women of color, our young men of color? Who's going to teach them how to navigate in that corporate space? That's a big part of my program. I have a nonprofit, White Cells Network Student Foundation, and we have this cohort. The cohort is all about teaching students how to navigate and prepare from college life into workplace.
Yes.
Because I noticed that there's a gap there, right? Absolutely. It was a gap when I was there, and it's a gap still that we're not teaching them how to make that transition successfully. Right?
Absolutely.
We talked about, you have a graduate degree in the arts. I have a graduate degree in the arts. If I think about, and salute to HBCU Week.
Absolutely.
If I think about A&M University and our programs and my sorority sisters that I pledged with, and the internships that they had, and, that were paid, and over the summer, and people flew them places and things like that. Those were not the internships that we got a lot in the arts.
Absolutely. No, you're
so,
absolutely
right. So versus focusing my cohort program on STEM, I'm focusing on students who are currently in BA programs.
That's good. That's excellent. That's excellent. And Bridget just came and said, yes, I've done that as well. Concern for the people we leave behind in the gaps. And I think that's important when we are truly people-centered and truly recognize that the work that we're doing is bigger than the company or bigger than the organization. And a lot of times, especially as you move up into an organization, it shouldn't be, but it's easy to forget that the people are who are necessary for the organization and for the success, not the profit, not the agendas. And even the customers, yes, but you've got to have people who serve the customers. And many of us, I believe, have stayed on jobs or stayed in positions or stayed in roles because we felt that gap and we felt like we were responsible for filling that gap. And so we did, and we became advocates of people in organizations where we knew that there was no voice. And I think that's amazing. But I'll say for me, it was at my demise because I found myself less productive and not authentically me, because in order to advocate for people at times in certain positions, I've had to make some decisions that I ordinarily wouldn't make. Or like I tell people, I sat in boardrooms and felt like a square peg in a round hole because I was the only one saying, hey, wait, what about this? So how do you handle that when you know you have a voice for the people, you know that you have a desire to serve people, but the business doesn't encourage that as much?
I found that my work with employee resource groups were very helpful for me to get that messaging out, right? And some companies have them so they can check the box, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So it's not really that they're, it's like, but what you do with them, with what you have, right? Absolutely. And so through those, been able to partner with other leaders of that organization, who entrusted me to do some things. And I always chuckle because our president of organization, one year we came and we did a presentation where I wanted to talk about inclusion. I wanted to display inclusion. So I invited all of the other resource groups to our event, to the African American event. And when I wrote a script. And so when people came in, when the people that came in that was performing it, they had their hands in their pockets. I had them in black hoodies and I had them coming into the beat of Flavor in my ear. So everyone's like, whoa, what's going on? Joyce lost her mind. She done went rogue.
Yeah, exactly.
What's happening? But what I wrote was a script. I interviewed different people from different groups, right? So I had someone that represent the Caucasian woman, the African American male, the Latino male, the LGBTQ community, the Asian community. And when they had their backs to the audience, and the skit was called Please Include Me. And I interviewed every group and I asked them what makes them feel excluded. Why do they not feel like they're included, right? And I took their words and I put it into poetry. And then I had someone read it. And then the last person of Asian descent came and she did hers. And then they all threw their hoodies off and turned around and said, please include me.
That's good. That's powerful.
And by having other groups represented doing that, it made everyone be willing more to listen to the African-American story because they were also listening to everyone else's story. So now it wasn't just about the Black woman, saying, oh, you're not, it let them know that everyone at some point in time had felt like they weren't included.
Absolutely.
So I've been fortunate to find my way. I remember in one company, I was in leadership and I couldn't be a part of those groups because they wouldn't allow leadership to be part of them. So I was able to be a part of that. And I really think that it was impactful to be able to use our voice and to be, one of the programs, the first one that I helped organize, we sung the Negro National Anthem. And yeah, that's what I called it. That's what it is. We'll talk about it later.
Yes.
And I just said, I was having a conversation with my mom and she was like, well, they're not singing the Negro National Anthem. They're not having a Black History program. And so I had someone come in and someone was singing it and someone was doing poetry to it. And one of our VPs started crying and one of our President started crying. It was a very emotional moment. But I was willing to put it all online. I told everyone, I said, look, if we get pushback for this, I'm going to own it. Don't worry about it.
Absolutely. That's awesome. So many things that you said that I think are so powerful. The first one, which is one of the last things you said, is I'm going to own it. Because a lot of times as leaders, it's hard to take that stand because so many of us are really afraid of pushback. And when you get to, I believe at times we get to certain places in our lives, and this is not just in corporate America, this is in life in general, where we know it's not going to necessarily be the most popular decision, or you're not going to get the results you want. And so when that happens, then you find yourself kind of like, if I do this, what's the fallout? But I think the fact that you were willing to do it and said that I'll take the fall for it, and I'll be, especially when you have other people who are working with you, and as leaders, that's so powerful to say, we're going to do this as a team, but I'm going to protect you and shield you. And I found, especially when I was in my latter years of corporate America, that you don't get that as much. You don't get the leaders saying, we're in this together. It's not a blame thing. I'm going to support you, and I'm going to do what's right and stand up for the underrepresented. And so many times we talk about underrepresented in socioeconomic statuses and things like that. When in actuality, there are people every day that we come in contact with, especially in corporate America, that are underrepresented. It could be an age difference. In my last company, there were a lot of young people who were in the front lines, but a lot of more mature people in the offices. And that's a disconnect, to be able to be represented as a youth in a corporate seat versus just a frontline worker. So I think a lot of times we have to remember as leaders that inclusion is not just about race. Or sexuality for that matter, because that's where the big bucks are being spent right now. That's where people are gravitating to, which I think is awesome. But my question now is, what's next? Because that won't always be the case. We hope that won't always be the case. We hope that we get to a point where there is equity and equality in areas. And when that happens, what do we do next? What's our next goal? What's our next motive? And how do we get there? So I'll ask you, Joyce, what do you think we can do now to prepare so that we're not always having to have these conversations in our society, just in society, in corporate America, in our homes, with our children? What do you think we ought to be doing to get to that point?
I think just engaging others, right? We met during COVID. We're having this great conversation. I've met some people of other backgrounds during this time. Some, still had their corporate hat on and couldn't relate, and others that have been more relatable. One thing that I try to push for, and I'm not going to say I have the perfect inclusive life, right? But I am saying that I am always open to inclusion. And I mentioned on an interview earlier in the week that, we have to think about too, as African Americans, we are growing, talk a lot about the Latino growth in this country. But when you think about the multiracial relationships and individuals that are considered African American, right? So, if you're, if one parent is of another ethnic background and you're African American, period, right? So when you think about that, the African American growth is going to be tremendous as well, and the African American dollars are going to follow. Right?
Absolutely.
And so I think one important thing that we need to do is be more inclusive on the weekends, right? When we're at home. I talk a lot, I talk often anyway, not a lot, but I talk often about segregated Sunday. We want to be inclusive Monday through Friday, but then Sunday we all go somewhere else and worship, and not to get, too much in the spiritual realm here. But I just really, my big mama used to say to us, a family that prays together, stay together.
That's good. Yeah, no, that's
we're truly going to be family, and we're truly going to be inclusive. We got to learn to pray together.
That's awesome. And I'll tell you why that's so powerful for me. I'm a spiritual person. I make no apologies for it. And I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine today. And I was telling her, as I was walking my kids to school and I was coming back, I was really another person we know's child just got diagnosed with COVID. And so I was like, God, okay, how, you can't, you can, but you can't really, like, how much longer, how much? And the scripture that kept coming to my head was, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray. And what you've just said is confirmation for me, because I was saying, well, God, I am praying. God, the people I know are praying. But what you said is the family that prays together stays together. And I am praying, but I'm praying with my community. and my people. And I don't necessarily mean African American, but my people. And when we look at that scripture and it says, if my people, God is talking about everybody.
Everyone.
And we're missing the unity in that. We're missing the power in coming together. You know, I feel like we're checking boxes to say, yep, I got this. I've got this kind of person in my office. I've got this kind of person in my office. I've recruited this kind of person, but we haven't done the work to make it one. You're still a Black woman in a corporate seat, or an LGBTQ, person or an Asian person in a community. We still haven't put people in a place where we don't have to look like that anymore. It's just, we're a group of people with one common goal, whatever that goal is, and we're pursuing it together. I think that's the power in what we need to be doing,
Absolutely. I've, for many years and I've said, I always pray for women in war-stricken countries, because I know as women and mothers, I'm not a mother, but I can imagine I'm an aunt, and I take my auntie business serious.
She does. Yes.
Take my auntie business serious. Yeah. And so, you just imagine to wake up and want to feed your kids, but you're afraid if you go out to get food for them, you may not return, and then they won't have you. Right.
Yeah.
And so, you mentioned that you're going to do something in October, and it's just funny we're having this conversation, because maybe it should be the world invite, right? Yes. Maybe it should be global. As I say, Why Sales Network is a global organization, and I say that deliberately, intentionally, because that is what I want to see from my company. I have young kids and my nieces and my godchildren, their children, in my family who are multiracial. I don't ever want them to go into an environment where they're not comfortable. I want to teach them, this business is teaching them that you can be in corporate, and there's nothing wrong with that. I've lived a great life in corporate. I've done some amazing things with some amazing people, some of my best friends I've met on the job. But what I am saying to them is that you have options.
Yeah.
And that you can create your own company, you can create your own business, you can create your own table. Yes. And then when you do that, you have an opportunity and responsibility to build something for the world.
Absolutely. And we talk about legacy a lot, but I think even in legacy, if we're not global minded, then legacy becomes, I'm going to help people that look like me, or we are compassionate about underrepresented people. And usually in our minds, and I think this is no matter what race or ethnicity you are, you look at underserved people still in your community. We never get to the point where we recognize that if you don't have a voice, you're underrepresented, whatever that voice is, versus, hey, you've got to be African American, or you've got to be this, or it's really, hey, if you don't have the ability to speak your truth and live in your truth and not be condemned for it or mistreated for it or overlooked for it, then you don't have the voice that you deserve, or that you were given the right to have that voice. And so I think a lot of times we marginalize in those manners, instead of saying, you know what, I represent everybody. Speaking of Joy, Why Sales Network, Joy Jackson, Joyce Johnson, our goal is to represent everyone who wants and desires to have that voice. And so I think that's important.
Yeah. And when you think about culture, culture is so different. I tell people all the time, when I was a leader, a young leader, people who come into the city of Houston to visit my team, and they say, wow, Joyce, the culture of your team is just different from everywhere else, right? Yeah. And so they're like, how, it doesn't feel like every other team in the company. I'm like, oh, well, thank you. That's
Exactly.
When you think about culture is, culture can be that someone grew up on the small island like I did, where you can literally walk anywhere you want to go, and that's one experience. One thing I noticed about my siblings and I is that we live in these big cities, but we always live in a small space.
That's
right.
good.
And in our small space, we like to be able to walk everywhere, right? My brother lives in a small area of Austin, Texas, and he walks 10 miles every day. He recently retired, and and you talk to all his neighbors. We grew up walking and we're talking to our neighbors. And if you were on a block a little bit farther away from your zone of home, your mom may get a call and say, Joyce, something,
Yeah.
But that's a culture that's a different culture I grew up in. I didn't grow up in this big city, Houston culture, like where I'm at now.
Yeah.
And, if you grew up in a rural area, that's a different culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. It just doesn't have to be, we just have to look at culture as being a different country or a different race or something like that. We all have these things in common.
Yeah.
If you grew up as a military child, right? You have that in common with other military.
Let me tell you, that's so powerful because I started doing culture research when I was in an organization, and culture is really about beliefs and traditions. And you can create beliefs and traditions with people who look nothing like you. For example, I am a mom of multiples. And so I resonate, I like, I share, I repost, I love other comments or women who talk about having multiples, because we have an understanding and a system and a sympathy and a bond, because we know what it's like to have two little people the same age running around your house. And we don't shun singletons. That's the official name, singletons, for people who only have one. That's the official name for people who only have one. Yes, you're a mom. Yes, you're a mom of multiples, or you're a singleton. And so we don't shun moms who are singletons. So it's easy to gravitate to people, but I think a lot of times we don't look for those commonalities. We are still very faith driven. So if you don't believe like I believe, if you don't worship like I worship, if you don't look like I look, if you don't live how I live, then we start to separate, instead of saying, you know what, you don't look like I look, you don't worship like I worship, but we all are, number one, people of love, because I believe all of us have that in our lives. All of us want to love. All of us want to be accepted and to be represented. And so that's the importance of really having culture conversations. It's not always about, and I tell people all the time, it's great to have a seat at the table, but if you're not eating, what does it matter that you have the seat at the table? And so a lot of times we always have people who come to the table, but when they come to the table, we never get them the opportunity or the exposure to actually have their voice. I think I've lost Joyce, but listen, she's coming back. But I will say this to everyone who's watching, diversity is so much more than just, hey, Vanessa just joined. Hey, Vanessa, diversity is so much more than highlighting the differences. We can spend a lot of time when we're having diversity conversations to spend a lot of time talking about the differences. But I believe if we want to get to a place of healing in our country, in our community, in our organizations, we've got to start thinking about the ways that we are alike. Because being alike is what drives us and what encourages us. So even though, yes, we want to talk about our differences, and we've created new positions and new roles, new organizations, so many things to highlight those differences, and to say we're going to highlight the differences and then bring somebody in to solve it. But the problems that we're experiencing, especially with finding our voice, are so much bigger than just filling a role or a position. I know a lot of people don't like to hear that. I get clients who I talk to who want to talk about diversity and inclusion and want me to come in and facilitate workshops, which I'm so grateful to do. But I always have to ask the questions to people. Hey, well, what is the go forward solution? What are we doing after this? Because we can hire someone to come in. We can hire someone to come in and to do the role. But once they do the role and once they're in the organization, how do we change the actual culture? And that becomes the beliefs, that becomes the ideas and the thoughts. Joyce is back. Hey, Joyce.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
Yes. I don't either, but I was telling everyone.
So it's
that's okay.
Look, but yes.
But that's okay. But I was telling everyone about how we've created these solutions and these roles and these jobs and opportunities to fill the gaps in diversity. But rather than focus so much on the differences, it almost is better for us to focus on the similarities, because once we focus on the similarities, we remove all the barriers and the things that we have that are sticking out that we're trying to fix. What do you think?
Absolutely. You know, when I think about the training I recently created, it's all about business owners, right?
Mm-hmm.
And helping them create a B2B sales strategy, you know, and we talk about our community, 28% growth in entrepreneurship during COVID,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
And so now, but every community, you start a business, sometimes out of need, sometimes out of passion, sometimes out of a combination.
Mm-hmm.
And then we all have the same things. You build this business, you put everything in place, and you're like, well, what now?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Absolutely.
What now? And most business owners don't have friends that are business owners, or
Yeah.
don't have family members that are business owners. Some of them are generational business owners with these, but for the most part, the people that I've talked to,
Mm-hmm.
they're not. So like I say, you know, entrepreneurship can be a lonely world. So if we talk about what our challenges are there and how those are similar, oh, we're so much more bonded than if we just talk
Absolutely.
about if I'm African American female and if you're a Latino male or what have you.
Absolutely. Because listen, if you don't know, the entrepreneurship road is probably the most rewarding road that I've been on professionally.
Right.
I mean, I'm not going to compare this to getting married to Steven. He's a really nice guy too. Or having my children. But as far as professionally, it's given me the most joy, the most peace, the most freedom, but the most stress, the most gray hair.
Yeah.
The most sleepless nights, the most fear, the most self-doubt, because it is a lonely road. And if you've been called to do the work, you have a responsibility, and the weight of that responsibility can sometimes scare you, paralyze you, all of those things. So Joyce, what has been your biggest fear in this entrepreneurial journey?
Fear in the entrepreneur journey. Oh
Mm-hmm.
gosh. The biggest one.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah, you said we all have many in this. Yes.
You know, just not doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because I want to make sure that I set it up the right way. You know, as I, you know, talk to attorneys and investors and things of that nature, and being able to set things up the right way to um where I can, if something happens to me, that my family's okay, and that they're protected by all of my intellectual property, the things
Mm-hmm.
that I put out, the hard work I've done, that they can continue to benefit from it.
That is a really good, not a good answer, like I'm applauding you, but
Mm-hmm.
those are things that I don't know that all of us as entrepreneurs have thought about.
Mm-hmm.
The after, we're so in the trenches of
Yes.
doing the work that we forget that, yes, we're doing it for the people whose lives we will touch, but we're
Mm-hmm.
also doing it for our family and our legacy.
Right.
And I don't think we think about that. That's an amazing point to think about, setting it up so that it can continue to
Right.
live after we're no longer. That is really awesome.
Right. You know, we were publishing books, and just think about how many people still buy the Bible, how many people
Mm-hmm.
still buy the How to Influence People and Make Friends and Influence
Yes.
People.
Yes. Uh-huh. Yes. Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's important to set it up the right way, right?
That's good. That's good.
So that it continues, and you know, and that it continues on. You know, a lot of people pass away, and the businesses and things go to the state to make decisions, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, and what have you. And that the right tools are in place, that I, you know, want to make sure things are automated.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want people to have to come in and do a lot of work, you know, but I think that's probably is a big part of who I am. My family's always been planning that way. You know, like I said, we're Southern.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we have this thing where you always got to have what they call a street policy. So you always got to have your own outside insurance, life insurance from what corporate has for you, and to be able to prepare for those, you know, for those things. And and what you prepare for the afterlife isn't for you. It's for people you leave behind. And making things easier for them. And I think a lot of times, just in life period, we don't take enough of that into consideration.
That's good. No, I mean, I think that's absolutely, and that's something that I think we all have in common.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anybody, regardless of race, sexual preference, religious background, who doesn't want a better life
Right.
whether they're alive or not, for the people that they love. So look at how easy it is for us to come as a common, a common ground if we wanted to seek it that way.
Yeah.
So it would be easy to sit with a room of people who look nothing like you, but you can say to them, hey, you know what? When it's all said and done, you want to make sure that your family is taken care of. Yes.
Yeah. When it's all said and
Everybody.
done. And, and I wanted to be simple, right? I mean, someone was interviewing me. It's going to come out soon, but, she was asking me about, those things. And I said, it's, I think it's important people to have wills, right? Especially when you're in business. And you need to be able to, unfortunately, I'll share a story with you. My cousin lost his 25-year-old son, and his son had a business. And no one had any idea on how to go about and engage in that business. And, and it was actually a good business, right?
Wow.
And so, you have to write those things down somewhere. You have to have a will, I'm always, I have a Google file. They say don't keep passwords, but if you don't keep passwords, then nobody's going to know where to go get anything, right?
Right. Exactly. No, you're absolutely, because your fingerprints going to go with you. Your irises and face recognition is going with you.
Face recognition, all that's going to go in the ground or whatever, however you want it to go. Yeah. But I think one of my biggest fears is, am I doing it the right way? Right. And so where and I've been in entrepreneurship before. I founded 3 different companies that, and I just think that I'm careful about how I add things onto my business, right? There's a plan for the business, but I don't add every piece you don't see it right now. It's coming.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
It's coming, but you don't see it right now. And I'm being intentional and deliberately about that because I want to make sure it's done the right way.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That is entrepreneurs. If you have not heard anything else, you have to consider doing it the right way. And even for me, that speaks to me, Joyce. Thank you for that, because when I heard you first say doing it the right way, I wasn't thinking about the business. I was thinking about doing it the right way for the audience and for the people. And that's natural to think about. Let me make sure I set it up right so that the people who experience Speaking of Joy will get what they need. But I have to remember, Speaking of Joy was also created for Shelby and Sydney and for their children. So setting it up is not just making sure that those who experience me externally do well and are successful, but if I haven't left anything for my children to be able to manage or to have this, then it literally, I hate to say it like this, and this is probably not the best way to say it, but it's going to die on the vine. Like it once, and most of us, we may have some mistakes. Months, yes. Yeah, exactly. Once we go to probate and everybody, forgets about how beautiful I was back then. That is so powerful. That is so powerful to think about leaving the legacy for the business too, not just when you go, people say, oh, I remember, oh, they were so great, but really making sure that everything thank you for that. That absolutely awesome. Yeah. That's a lot of work that I don't think we do as entrepreneurs. Yeah. When we, especially new entrepreneurs don't think about all of those pieces.
And it's an investment also. You have to be able to add that to your budgeting, and be able to make that, make those investments. It is an investment, right? But we have to make sure that we trademark our things. We have to make sure that things are copywritten, and I share with you also this summer, I was able to provide a paid internship for my goddaughter. She's a junior in college now. And boy, how rewarding is that, right?
Yes.
Is that was just amazing to be able to have her work in my business with me. And as I would see her or talk to her daily, it made me to continue to focus on that piece even more.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Joyce. Thank you so much for that. That's awesome. So I have another question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
I try to share this as much as I can with my clients, especially coaching clients. What is the biggest, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. What's the biggest?
Let me write them down.
Well, this is easy. What's the biggest mistake you made as an entrepreneur? What's the biggest mistake? And then from that, what lesson did you learn?
I actually write about this in my upcoming co-author book, Color Outside the Lines, Extraordinary Stories of Leadership. And I think sometimes we bring people on and into our business, and we want to go focus on other things, and we leave them to carry a lot of the business things.
Mhm.
And basically, never taking your eye off the ball, always owning your business. I don't care if they're a family member, if they're like family, if they're
Okay.
friends,
Uh-huh.
right? Um, because at the end of the day, you know, you're growing your business, and it's your business, and
Mhm.
it's not your family's business. It's not your, um, a family like or friend's
Mhm.
business or
Yeah.
what have you. It is your business, and you have to stay fully engaged on everything. So I think if I, um, sometimes we don't like change, right? So
Mhm.
I've always been known for having really great retention numbers.
Okay. Good. Mhm.
And I've also, and what I learned throughout the years is that, you know, you can retain people, but you got to also be able to let people go, let people grow,
Mhm.
and you have to be comfortable with change yourself,
Mm. Good.
and you have to become very comfortable with being uncomfortable,
Yes, yes.
right?
That yeah, that's so important in life. That's just not in
Hmm.
business.
Life
Life changes.
and in all relationships,
whether whether
right?
we're ready
I
for it or not, it's going to
right.
change.
In all relationships. I've had a breakup in my personal relationship during COVID. And
Mhm,
you just have to be okay with change. You have to be
mhm,
okay with being uncomfortable. And for me,
mhm.
it took me, for me, I always have to remind myself that everything I need, everything
Mhm.
God has given me.
Absolutely.
It is, and
That's
it
yeah.
it's within me to release it and to go
Mhm.
and make it happen.
That's I mean, that's if that's not voice, I don't know what is because it's I just I that's a blessing to hear because for so many people, especially people women that I work with, they forget
Oh yeah,
that
we do,
you have the power. It's no longer now we can find excuses why we don't do it,
right?
but ultimately,
And
you
normally it's fear.
have, yeah, it's, yes, exactly. But you have the power. You
Yeah,
do have the resources to get started. You may not have all the resources, but the
right.
resources to get started, I tell people all the time, is just taking that first step. The resources to get started, it's we go to money, but it's really confidence. It's really tapping into your network of people. It's really sharing who you are and your vision. And once you do that, then gifts will make room for you, opportunities will come, exposure will come, but we don't want to trust that we have what it takes.
Right. And I
Yeah.
think also, I want to touch on that, tapping into your network of people, because,
Mhm.
unfortunately, a lot of times your network of people, they aren't going to be the people that do it for you, right?
Mhm.
And I have to remind myself of that in
Mhm.
entrepreneurship, right? Because I've always said that the people that I've helped and I've empowered, and that God has assigned me to bless
Mhm.
may not ever be the people that bless my life, but there will be someone who does it.
Absolutely.
And you
Absolutely.
have to be willing to step out and find those people.
Yeah.
And if the people that you within your network don't deliver for you, they don't show up for you, it's, honestly, a challenge for me is that, even people, they're not going to support you out loud because they're fearful,
Mhm.
right? They're not, going to support you. They may think that you're competition or whatever it
Yes,
is.
absolutely. Absolutely.
But know that if you keep picking up the phone, you keep getting up every day. I always say, get up, show up, and follow up. If you get up, show up, and follow up,
I like that. Uh-huh.
it'll happen for you.
I like that. Get up, show up, and follow up.
Yeah, get up, show up, and follow up every day.
I
And if you
like
sleep
that.
in late because you're not feeling it or whatever, that's okay. But eventually, you got to get up, show up, and follow up, right?
I like that. I like that. And I'll tell you, Joyce. One of my friends of mine that are entrepreneurs as well. It's a set of twins, the Career Salon. We joke all the time because when we started the journeys together, we were really rooting. We still are rooting each other on the sidelines. You can do it, girl. You can do it. You can do it. And we used to always say, you know, you're the people that are going to help you and going to bless you are mostly the people you don't even know. Because we always say Jesus and strangers. Those are the people who are going to help you, because it's sometimes your immediate audience, which is your immediate network or your friends or your family, they know you. So they're going to help you maybe because they love you. But that's not the same as a network of people who necessarily believe and are going to push you in a different way.
And so it becomes, it's like, corporate, we have mentors and we have sponsors, right?
Yes.
That's a whole nother one, because a lot of times as color and corporate, we don't have those sponsors. We don't have those people that's in that room that can make a decision or a call or whatever, make something happen for us. It's the same with entrepreneurship, right? So in entrepreneurship, we have to find allies. We have to find people that we can add value to. Either we're going to add value to them or maybe not even add value. They may just be that one person who want to help you because they like you and what you're doing, and they believe in your story and your messaging. But then they also may just be that person that can invest in your business. They may be that person that if you are successful, they know that you can help someone else. Like I tell people, when I help them, they're like, what can I do for you? I'm like, oh, nothing, but I always say, answer the phone if I call you. Because I'm probably not going to call you to help me. I'm going to call you to help someone else.
Yeah.
Right. That's good. So I want you to pay it forward. And so we have to, so now I remember I was at a conference. Actually this year I went to a conference in Dallas, and a gentleman, Tim Sorby, said, do you want to be my friend? Do you want to be friends with me? I said, no, I would like you to be an ally. I said, so, wait on my call because I'm going to make it, but I'm not going to make it until it's the right time.
Wow. That's good. So what I hear from you, Joyce, and I'm going to sum this up and I'm going to ask you to tell me if this is true and then define it. What I hear is that you have experienced enough and walked in enough places to really have a confidence, and not necessarily in Joyce Johnson, but a confidence in what you bring to the table, a confidence in what you can do, a confidence in what you've learned, a confidence in your business and yourself. So is that true first? Let me ask that.
Not every day.
Okay. Well, exactly. And that's what I was going to ask you was my question. That was going to be my question is,
honest as I can be.
Yes. How do you, that was going to be my question. How do you find that confidence knowing like who we really are, knowing the challenges that you face? How do you get up every day to get up, show up, and follow up? How do you do that every single day, even in the moments where you're like,
and it's different daily. It's different daily. I have pictures of my nieces on my phone. I'm inspired by the fact that whenever they're with Auntie, they have no thought of what something costs or that they're not going to be able to do what they want to do, right? But it's something different every day. I may call my mom and ask her to pray with me. I may just, drop down and pray for myself. And I sometimes I just have to talk to myself. I have to write things out and I have to say, Joyce, you got this. It's okay. You got this. Right. Awesome. And I believe that. And there's time, and I think that there's things I've experienced in my life. I've, written about in my last book, No Back Doors for Me. Just some of my isms and things I've dealt with through life. And I know sometimes those things kind of weight us down and they play on our confidence, and when we have to go through all the change, I said, well, entrepreneurship can be a lonely life, and we're at home during COVID and things. We can start having that fear and that doubt when things don't work out. But being in sales and being a salesperson, having to get up every day, and I tell myself, put my game face on. It's going to be a point during that conversation with myself. I'm going to say, put your game face on and make it happen. Awesome. I tell my nieces, make it a great day. Don't have a great day. Make it a great day.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you have the power to do that. We have the power to do that.
Have the power to do that. Make it a great day. And I actually teach my nieces a game face. I've been teaching my little 8-year-old, like, put your game face on.
That's all that. I mean, that's powerful. That's powerful, because even if you don't feel it, it doesn't mean it's not there. you know? So even if you don't feel confident, that doesn't mean you don't have confidence. We don't feel the wind, but we know it's there. We see evidence of it. So there are going to be times in our lives the same way where we may not feel the confidence, but we see the evidence of it. Or we may not feel like we're making an impact, but we see the evidence of it. So that game face lets you go in every day and do the hard work. That's excellent.
Go in every day and do the hard work. I've gone into rooms and meetings where I know they were going to be tough and whatever works for you. But for me, I might put on some special lingerie up under my clothes so that I can go in there like the Power Ranger girl I am, or my Wonder Woman. And they don't know. And I'm sitting in there like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, listen, I like that. That is awesome. That is awesome, Joyce.
We're put on my high heel shoes and I'm like, yeah, right. So
yeah, exactly. No, that's
for you. Put your game face on, your suit of armor, and go make it happen.
Joyce, thank you so very much. This has been absolutely awesome. How can people get in touch with you?
They can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, and I've been a little slow on LinkedIn lately because I have been getting a lot. And my thing on LinkedIn is that, and with everything, I like to send everyone a personal note who reach out to me. So I have my team that check my socials and things like that, but they know my LinkedIn messages. I am going to respond myself.
Awesome.
You can reach out to me on LinkedIn at Joyce Johnson. My platforms are I am Joyce Johnson, IAM Joyce Johnson on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. And we have a TikTok now and YouTube. And then for Y Sales Network, we have Y Sales Network, our page, www.ysalesnetwork.com, and then Y Sales Network on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram.
Awesome. Well, Joyce, thank you so very much.
Thank you, Joyce.
Joyce was let me tell you, Joyce was one of the first people that I sat with and poured all my ideas out to her, and she was like, okay, so how do we do it? What do we need to do? So she would, and you don't even know that, Joyce, but the fact that I was able to share with you and you were just able to show me and share with me some of the things that you've experienced and how you've, and we come from the corporate background, so we have that in common, but just to see the things that you've done and to see how you're creating your business has really been an inspiration. So I'm watching in the shadows. I thank you so very much for joining the Leadership Lunch Break today. I want to thank all of you who've watched today. I invite you to share this, to like it, to let people know what we're talking about. This one is really good, especially if you know an entrepreneur that needs to be reminded that, number one, they have a voice, but also what to do with that voice. I encourage you to share this with others. The Leadership Lunch Break podcast came out today. It's talking about actually starting over. So sometimes in lives, we've got to just realize we've got to do some things differently. So make sure you're going to the Leadership Lunch Break podcast on any streaming platform so that you can hear the great thoughts there. Joyce, I want you to have make it a great day, a great rest of the day. And thank you so much for joining the Leadership Lunch Break. You all have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Leadership Lunch Break. Join us next Thursday at noon Central Standard Time for lunch as we continue our discussions. Follow Speaking of Joy on all social media platforms or visit our website at www.speakingofjoy.com. That's www.speakingofjoye.com. Until next week.